For my Veterans Project, I'll be interviewing my stepmom, Shannon.
Hello.
Okay, so my first question is, why did you choose to enlist?
When I was in high school, my biggest dream at the time was to go in the military. And I had always thought Army would be probably my path, I would say, although I wasn't really sure. I had to take a few tests to figure out which branch of the military would accept me. You had to have a certain score in order to get into different branches of the military. So I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, but I knew college was not my ticket after high school.
So you joined the Army? That was the branch you joined?
I did. Based off of my score, when I went to do the test, it was the ASVAB test. I can't even remember what I got, but I scored high enough to get into the Army, and I liked the Army. My uncle was, he retired from the Army, so I was a big fan, and I liked it. I didn't want to be a Marine. It was a little too G.I. Joe, very gung-ho kind of thing, and I wasn't, as a woman, I didn't want to be a Marine. So I would have loved to have gone to the Coast Guard, but I didn't test high enough to get in.
How long were you in the military for?
I had a 4-year deployment, and so when I was 17 when I joined, and I was a senior in high school, and I had to have my mom and my dad sign papers saying that they approved of me going into the military. And so I went into the delayed entry program, or the DEF program. So yeah, I was 17 when I joined, and I was 17 in July when I graduated in May, and I didn't go until January of 93. So I had a 4-year deployment from there.
Okay. Were you ever homesick?
Everybody is homesick. Everybody, especially in basic training, you're very homesick for your family, for your friends, for your life, because it's very different than anything that you have known up until that point, especially being young. Maybe when you're older, you don't get as homesick, or I remember there was a woman who was in her 30s who I thought was very old at the time, because of course I was like 17, and she had a couple kids, and she just cried and was so sad. And I was thinking, wow, it's gotta be horrible. But I was sad too, because I obviously couldn't see my friends, and you just really wanted to have that connection to home.
How did you handle it?
A lot of letters. Back then, everything was letter writing. There was no phone calls, and if you did phone calls, it was a payphone, and you had a very short amount of time. But everything was pen pals and paper. You waited for mail call. That was really, really important. And so everybody that you thought you were friends with, you sent letters to them and hoped that they would send a letter back to you.
How was basic training? Can you explain it?
Yes, basic training was very hard. I went to basic training in January of 1993, which was winter, and I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. So I went into the dead of winter, into the woods. It was very cold and difficult. A lot of packing rucksacks and moving, walking, training. A lot of nighttime training. They did all types of training, but their intention, their point was to break you down and build you back up. So they were very hard on us. And it's different from when I went in as compared to today. As I understand it today, they have like cards you can say, oh, I'm too stressed, or I need a break, or whatnot. Back then, there were no cards. There were no breaks. You took it and you did everything they asked you to do when they asked you to do it, as long as they asked you to do it.
Okay. What job did you have? Why did you choose this job? Or did you choose it? How did that happen?
So when you test in, you go to sign up. When you actually go in to enlist, and they give you a choice based off of what you scored on the ASVAB. They say these are the particular jobs that are available to you. So I had about 10 different jobs that I could do. Medical specialist was one of them, dental specialist. Honestly, I can't remember the other ones, but I know I had probably a list of 10 jobs, and I thought that a medical specialist was was interesting. Honestly, I didn't know much about it, but it was an EMT, and so I was a medic in the Army. It's 91 Bravo is what the MOS was.
Okay. Did you travel anywhere?
I did. So when I went in, I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training. And then after basic training, I went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas for my advanced individual training or AIT training. That's where I learned how to be a medic. And then I was stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And from there, I was able to travel to Egypt. We went to Cairo, Egypt for about 4 months and stayed in the desert close to the pyramids. And it was on a bivouac. It was in 1994. It's called Bright Star 94. And so basically they went over there. They shipped everybody over there, everybody meaning our Army group, Air Force, Marines. Everybody came into this one site and we did military games basically. And you trained and made sure that everybody was up to par. And the unit that I was stationed with was 47th HMC. We were a 305 bed field hospital, which meant that we had nurses and doctors, medics, dental specialists, anything that you would find in a real hospital, you would find in our hospital, except we were mobile. So we could set up, basically it was called Tent City, and we had 305 different beds that were available to people, and if something happened during training or we needed to simulate, they could come to that particular space. But yes, so Egypt is where I went. I had a lot of friends who went to Japan and Germany. I really wanted to go to Germany, but I never got orders to go to Germany. So Egypt was the best place that I went to, although I did stop in Italy for Thanksgiving, and they were very, very nice, the Italians, on their Air Force base. So
When you were in the Army, when you had free time, what did you do to like entertain yourself?
Since I was in Oklahoma, we did a lot of hiking and camping. We traveled to Texas and we traveled to different state parks and did a lot of camping, and it was group camping. So you had all of your friends come with you. We would leave on Friday and we'd go and set up camp and hang out and canoe and rappel. We would go camping and climbing, and it was just really a good time. Swimming, kayaking, a lot of outdoor stuff, a lot of very hands-on outdoorsy things with big groups of people.
Did you have any problems with officers?
No, I didn't have any problems with officers. You could definitely, there was a division though. You could definitely tell there was enlisted in officers, and they made it very clear where the ranks were. We also had very young officers that came in, and so they were, when I went in, it was right after Desert Storm, and so I came in during peacetime, and some of my sergeants and people in my platoon, they had been to war, and so they were roughened, and they had a different mindset as to what military was, and I came in very, very new and very fresh, and I had never been to war, and I've never been to war, so their idea of what training in military was very different than what mine was, and the lieutenants that were coming in had never been to war either, so you could tell the people who had that kind of experience in relation to the people who didn't. So I didn't have any problems, but you could definitely see where you call them real military. You know, the people who had really seen the front line, they had a different vision of what the military was.
When you left the military, how was it finding a job?
I thought it would be easier than what it was, because I thought that my military EMT, and I also got a military CDL, so I could drive a 2.5 ton. I thought that I could take that and it would transfer very easily, so I could also get a civilian CDL license or a civilian EMT license, and that is not the case. They did not transfer, and so I would have to go through all the training as a civilian that I've already gone through the military. While I had that training and I knew kind of what I wanted to do, I wasn't able to use it immediately. So when I got out of the military, I didn't do anything in my field. I had to find a job like everybody else, and I found a job hanging rear trailer doors at a trucking company called Great Dane in Terre Haute. And so I worked there for about a year, and then eventually moved down to Florida with my family. So it was nothing to do with anything I had learned in the military. But later on in life, I did become an EMT, a civilian EMT, and have been an EMT for the last 10 years.
Has anyone else in your family been in the military?
Yes, everybody, well, not everybody, but all the men in my family have been in the military. So my stepdad was in the Navy, and he was in Vietnam. He was a communication specialist. He used to travel in between the big tankers for communications. So that was fascinating to me. He was in the Navy. And then my dad, my biological father, he was in the Marines. He was in the Marines for 12 years. He was a rigger, a parachute rigger. And my great-grandfather was an air traffic controller in the Air Force. And my uncle started off in the Marines with my dad, and then he stayed in the Marines for 4 years, got out, and re-enlisted in the Army, and then ended up being in the Army for 25 years and then retired. So, and then my half-brother, Chris, he joined the Navy, and he was in for 4 years, and he wasn't in submarine. I can't remember what he did. Nuclear power something or other, but yeah, most of the men in my family, anybody who could join, did. So I was the first female in my family to join, and I like that. Although my cousin was a police officer, she was a cop. But other than that, yes, I have very strong military ties.
Your stepdad that was in the Vietnam War, was he drafted or did he join on his own?
He was drafted. He was drafted. He was older. He was 15 years older than my mom. So, yes, he was drafted, but he wasn't against going. He would have gone either way. He wasn't a fan by any means. He caught the very end of the Vietnam War.
Okay. What are some memorable experiences you had?
Riding a camel next to the pyramids. That was really cool. Everybody, they're a very poor country. When we went, we had to be escorted by the Egyptian government, and so going on buses, they would come on with AK-47s, and they would escort us from the bus to whatever site we were going to. And specifically, we were at the pyramids, and so we get off the bus, and women have, culturally, you had to be very demure and, wear long sleeves and cover yourself and whatnot. And so I was in a long sleeve shirt and pants, and I was with some friends. And so you paid to get on this camel, and they take you out, they take a photo, and they bring you back. Well, when we got out there, they didn't want to bring us back. They charged us more money in order to get back. We were like, no, we've already paid our money. We were paid to go out and come back, not just to go out. So I thought that was pretty funny. And we also, while I was in Egypt, I got to see a wedding. It was the most magical, fascinating wedding I've ever seen and will ever see. They came out in the streets. We were at a hookah bar, and we were I wasn't actually partaking, but we were at a hookah bar and drinking, I think, at the time. And they had come from a mosque, and there was this beautiful woman who had, white dress and colorful dress, and she had chains from her nose and all around her, and she was surrounded by all these men who were like clapping and singing, and it was fantastic and beautiful, and it was definitely something I'll never forget. When we were going back, we were past curfew and got stopped and had a hard time getting through. So that was also something. We had to have all of our papers, which we did, but they took our papers and didn't want to give our papers back. So we had to, I can't say that we ever went back out after that. We also got in trouble for being out. So it was very good. It was enjoyable, for sure.
Have you stayed in contact with any of your military friends?
I have. Actually, I would say they are probably some of the best friendships I've ever had and ever made. Going through basic training and AIT, you definitely build a bond with those people because you're going through very difficult time and you have to lean on them, and the friendship that you earn or that you get, it doesn't break easily. So yes, I have friends now that they have continued to be in the military, and they've been to Afghanistan and Iraq and went through the war, and then have also gotten out. I have people who got out directly thereafter, but yes, I have probably, I would say 10 or 15 people right now on my Facebook friends, or just friends that have all been in the military and that I know, and that if I needed something, I could call on them immediately, or same, if they needed something, I would be there for them.
How did being in the service affect your life today?
That's a hard question. It was one of the best experiences and hardest things that I've ever done, ever. I wouldn't change it. I would have done it again. If I could go back and do it again, I would. I would probably do it the same, or try to test higher and go in the Coast Guard. But I would still do it again, and I enjoyed it. I would have tried harder, for sure, because I was really lazy and young. But if I could go back, I would definitely work my butt off. My roommate, Jeanette Counsman, she is a colonel. She did so well and knew exactly what she wanted. She went from enlisted to officer training school, or OTC, and so she went to West Point and graduated, and then has just basically risen in the ranks, and she has traveled the world and is just a rock star. So yeah, it's definitely life-changing, for sure.
Why did you not stay longer?
Because I was young and I made poor decisions. Honestly, I didn't think it through. I thought I got out on an honorable discharge, and that was fine. And I didn't think I needed it. I didn't think that it was as impactful at the time as what I know it is now. So if I could do it again, I would have stayed in, and I would have stayed 20 years. I would have, because of the benefits. I could have become a nurse. There are so many things that I could have done had I stayed in, but like I said, I was very young, and I thought that I knew better, and I made better decisions, and I didn't. So I love my life now, but it's definitely been a different road. So had I stayed in, I could have gone and traveled the world, and I could have gotten my nursing degree, and the military could have truly benefited me instead of me just taking a small snippet.
Do you have any kids?
I do. I have 2 stepchildren and a 9-year-old adopted son. And so my oldest son, Noah, Karsten's brother, he joined the National Guard, the Army National Guard, which we were super, super excited about. Actually, I wish he would have gone regular Army, only because I think the benefits for him would have really, really been good. National Guard is an awesome division of the military. However, for Noah, he would have really benefited from having a full-time job all the time and having the structure of it, where he kind of only goes 1 weekend a month, and then he does a couple weeks during the summer. He would have benefited greatly from it. He went in infantry instead. He was very young, and we let him obviously make his own choices, and he was allowed to do that. And so he went into the infantry, even though he tested so high that he could have gone military intelligence and got a signing bonus. So he chose against, because he wanted to do different work, which we appreciate, and we are very thankful that he is doing what he's doing, but he could have done something bigger and made more money, for sure.
What did your family think about you joining the military?
My mom cried. She was very upset and did not think that it was a good path for me, although she knew that college also wasn't the best path. So she was just really worried about, what was going to happen. I mean, when you're 17, making adult choices and decisions and going away and not being close to your parents is hard. So she was very upset and didn't want to sign the papers because, like I said, my parents had to sign the approval saying that they would allow me to join since I was so young. And my dad, both my dads, my stepdad and my real dad, they were proud and excited and nervous for me because they knew it was going to come. My biological father laughed a lot because he knew it was going to be really, really tough, and he wasn't sure how he was going to handle it. And my stepdad, Ree, he was very excited and proud, and knew that I would do well, but it was going to really be hard because I was very rebellious and young, and made crazy decisions. And so going into the military, like I said, they break you down and they build you back up. So there is no giving attitudes. There is no talkbacks. There is no, oh, I don't feel like it this morning. You will get up at 6 o'clock and stand there until they tell you otherwise. And we would get up at dark 30 in the morning, freezing cold, and stand there. And I learned how to sleep standing up. So that was the talent that I never had. I don't know that I could still do it, but I knew I could do it for a long time thereafter. So you would stand there, and basically they would wait it out. They made you go out there and stand in formation until someone fell asleep or fell down, and then they would come out and yell at you for falling asleep and falling down. And then we would hike and go somewhere else, or march down the street and come back, and they'd let us come in and get showers or go to chow or do whatever we needed to do. But it was very difficult. So my mom was right to be afraid because I didn't do it well all the time. That's for sure. I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned the hard way, which I think most kids do. And but my dad's kind of knew what was in for it because they had gone through it, so they knew what was coming.
What did you think of Noah joining? Like, how did you think he was going to do?
I thought he would be stellar. I did. I thought he would rock it out, and he did. He became a platoon leader and rose very quickly through the enlisted quickie ranks, and I knew he would do well. I wish that he had gone to do something else, because not that infantry is bad. We need people in the front line. I just know Noah's such a smart kid that he could have had an amazing job and really gone and done some amazing things, but he wanted to blow stuff up. He wanted to shoot stuff and blow things up, and so that's why infantry was his way. Nobody could tell me, that's for sure, what I was going to do or where I was going to go, because I was going to do it no matter what. And he's exactly the same way, and had to learn the hard way. And he enjoys what he does. He's in Louisiana now, doing his 2 months or 2 weeks out of the summer, doing Army games, bivouacs, and in the hot heat, getting eaten up by some serious mosquitoes, but he loves it.
Mm-hmm. Can you expand on your dad's experience in the Vietnam War?
Yeah, he brought home some real emotional scars, and I think that's the same as with the people that who have been in any war. I mean, they come back with PTSD, although they didn't know at the time that it was PTSD. And so he was exposed to Agent Orange, and he did get a lung disease because of it. And so at the very end, my dad has passed away since. It's been 3-4 years now, and he had COPD and some other things. But because he was exposed to that kind of chemical agent in Vietnam, it had lasting effects on him throughout his entire life. But he also had friends that he went in with who were also very, very young and died immediately. They were there in Vietnam a day or two and got killed. Like I said, he was communications, so he would be swung like on a line between ships as they were sailing in the ocean. So they would put him on this contraption or like a seat, and because you couldn't just jump over, so they would connect this line in between the two liners or whatever battleships they were on, and they would like swing him back and forth. It was fascinating, but he said it was really, really scary because people would get smashed if the ships were too close together. The communications guy could get smashed in between the two ships, so that was a real fear for him. And he learned a lot. He said it was very much like the movie that Robin Williams was in with Good Morning Vietnam. Very, very much like that. And like I said, he was only in for about a year during that time, but it was a lasting effect on him. He didn't like to talk about Vietnam very much. He was very sad thinking about it, and it was a very difficult time. They did not get a hero's welcome coming home. People were very angry that he had been there, and even though he was drafted, still they were very angry with the fact that he was there and that he was fighting. So he did not feel the love as your older veterans have.
Was it hard for him to find a job when he got back?
No, not at all. Communications was a fantastic field. He ended up working in California at NBC. He worked with Johnny Carson, and he was a broadcast engineer. So he had an amazing career thereafter. He worked at NBC for quite some time, and then I can't think what it was, like Global.com or Global something or other. And then he decided he wanted to start his own cable business. So we moved from California, from Santa Monica, California, to Ohio, where he was originally from. And when I was in 6th grade, and he started his own cable business, and he strung or hung the actual cable line using a bucket truck from pole to pole. And I would pass out flyers at houses so that we could get business. So my dad was the first one to bring cable TV to the residents at Guilford Lake, Ohio. Yes, back in the day when your cable box was actually connected to the cable remote, so there was a line that went from the box to the clicker. Oh yeah, dating myself.
Did your family's time in the military motivate you to join?
Yes, absolutely. I thought I was very proud of them, and I was proud to be a part of the military. It was something that I considered even when I was very young, and my biological father was still in the Marines. He was on base, and I just really fell in love with the idea of it. Even at I think 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I would go and visit him because my parents were divorced. And so when I went there, we would be on base, and he was in base housing, and so all the kids would play on the swing sets in the back of the houses. And he would come home in his military uniform, and then he would go out in the morning and wake up, and he'd put on this weird black sweatsuit because you had to be a certain weight in order to be in the military at his age. So he had to make sure that he was not gaining weight, and so he would run miles and miles and miles trying to sweat out weight. But I remember it was just a very strange thing to see him coming back and being all sweaty and nasty. But I liked the idea of the military. I thought that it was a good profession. It was fascinating and something to be proud of. I know that the Vietnam veterans had a very difficult time. World War II veterans didn't. They came home to picket parades and ticker tapes and amazing things. They also had a horrible time when they were there, but people loved them when they came back. During Desert Storm, right before I got in, it was so quick that I don't remember people thinking poorly of the military at that time. I think we went in and it was very quick, kind of came back out. And the kids today, I call them kids, but the people today who have gone to Iraq and Afghanistan, they will come home and it will be very, very hard for them to readjust into civilian life. It will. They will have seen things that the Vietnam veterans and World War II veterans obviously know about and have seen, and it's not something that you can ever get away from. You can't ever forget about it, and it changes you. It changes your life. I'm really fortunate because I was in during peacetime, so I don't have those kind of memories, and I don't ever have to worry about PTSD, but the kids today do.
You said that your dad was treated differently bad when he came back from Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Was your whole family treated like that, or just him?
Just him. And it really, you just didn't talk about it. So when he came home, he didn't want to be in uniform when he came into the airport or when he came, in a taxi coming home. He would change out of his uniform and change into civilian clothes before he went home because he was afraid of being judged. And he didn't talk about being in the Vietnam War ever. I mean, not when I was growing up. Only when we were older and I had been in the military and I was an adult could we have those kind of conversations. But it just was not a warm welcome.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
I just have serious respect for all the veterans and current military people. I think they do an amazing job, and that we should respect them no matter what job they do, because everybody, it takes an army, literally, to support all the people that are there. And without the families supporting them, it would be much harder for them. So anything that we can do to make it easier, yeah, I would like to be a part of that.
I actually have one more question.
Sure.
Are you treated any differently because you're a veteran?
I think that people have respect for me because I was a veteran. Although, again, I think there's a big difference between people like me who have never been to war and people who have been. You know, you definitely, and it's all individual taste. But for me specifically, I have a high regard for those veterans who have been in war, in comparison to someone like me who was in for 4 years and easy breezy. I went in and came out and I didn't see any action, which I'm happy for, super happy for. But I do think that I am treated with respect because of that, and it's helped me to get jobs. There's no doubt about it. Having that kind of experience, it showed leadership skills and qualities, and that I could be responsible. People thought I would be responsible because of having that in my past.
Well, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much for interviewing me.